Skanda 5. Table 5 Priyavrata, Skanda 5, Chapter 1. Priyavrata was from the beginning under the influence of Narada. So he declined to take part in the rule of the universe till at last Brahma persuaded him not to shirk his assigned work. King Priyavrata married Barhishmati, the daughter of Vishwakarma. By her he had 10 sons, Agnidhra and all etc. and all names of Agni. Of these 10, Kavi, Mahavira and Savana were spiritually inclined and they became Paramahamsas. Paramahamsa is one who gives up the world entirely and becomes fixed in Brahma. Priyavrata had by another wife 3 sons, Uttama, Tamasa and Raivata. They all became Manus. Priyavrata reigned for 400 million years. The sun god Aditya moves round the Sumeru mount and sends his rays up to the Lokaloka range, illumining half the regions while the other half remains dark. King Priyavrata, in the exuberance of spiritual power, determined to illuminate the dark regions and to make it all day and no night. He followed the sun god 7 times with a chariot as swift and right as that of the sun god himself, even as though he were a second Aditya. Brahma appeared saying, "Desist, O sun, this is not thy assigned duty in the universe." The ruts caused by the wheel of Priyavrata's chariot are the 7 oceans which gave rise to the 7 dvipas, Jambu, Plaksha, Salmali, Kusa, Krauncha, Shaka and Pushkara. Of these dvipas, each succeeding one is twice as large as the one preceding it. The 7 oceans respectively consist of Kshara, salt, Ikshu, sugarcane juice, Sura, wine, Ghrita, clarified butter, Kshira, milk, Dadhi, curd, and Shuddha, pure water. They are like ditches round the dvipas and their dimensions are the same as those of the corresponding dvipas. King Priyavrata divided the 7 dvipas among his 7 sons. Thus, to Agnidhra, he gave Jambu Dvipa. Idma Jihva, he gave Plaksha Dvipa. To Yajnavahu, he gave Salmali Dvipa. To Hiranyaretas, he gave Kusadvipa. To Ghritaprastha, he gave Kraunchadvipa. To Medhatiti, he gave Sakadvipa. And to Vitihotra, he gave Pushkardvipa. He gave his daughter Urjaswati in marriage to Sukra. The famous Devayani was their daughter. Skanda 5, Chapter 2. King Agnidhra presided over Jambudvipa. He saw the Apsara Purva Chitti and became love-stricken, so much so that he became a Jada, a literally fixed, materialized, hence idiotic and mad. The king had by her 9 sons, Nabhi, Kimpurusha, Harivarsha, Ilavrata, Ramyak, Hiranmaya, Kuru, Bhadrasva, and Ketumala. Each of them presided over the Varsha of his name. They were respectively wedded to the following 9 daughters of Meru: Merudevi, Pratirupa, Ugradanshri, Lata, Ramya, Syama, Nari, Bhadra, and Devaviti. Skanda 5, Chapter 4 to 6. Nabhi had for his son Rishabha an incarnation of Vishnu. Rishabha knew his Varsha to be the field of karma. He married Jayanti and had by her 100 sons. The eldest and most qualified of his sons was Bharata. Bharatavarsha is named after him. The chief amongst the remaining 99 sons were Usavrata, Ilavrata, Brahmavarta, Malayaketu, Bhadrasena, Indrasprik, Vidarbha and Kikata. These 9 were the immediate successors of Bharata and were attached to him. Following them were Kavi, Hari, Antariksha, Prabuddha, Pippalayana, Abhirotra, Dravida, Chamasa, and Karabhajana. They were devoted to Bhagavan. Their story will be related in the 11th branch of this Purana. The younger 81 sons were devoted to karma and they were great performers of yagna. Rishabha called his sons together and gave them proper advice. He taught them Atmavidya and revealed to them his own nature as the all pervading Purusha, free from avidya. This, my body, is inconceivable. My heart is pure sattva. All impurities were cast off by me. Therefore, good people call me Rishabha, primarily a bull, secondarily the best. You are all born of my heart, and so you all are great. Follow your brother Bharata willingly. By serving him, you will do your duty by your subjects. So saying, he made over the reins of government to Bharata and himself became a Paramahamsa. He took the vow of silence and never spoke again. He looked blind, dumb, and deaf like one obsessed and mad. He went everywhere in the state, heedless of what others said. People flocked around him wherever he went. At last, he thought the rush of people to be an impediment to yoga and took the vow of Ajagara life. Ajagara is a huge python that does not move, but eats whatever comes within the reach of its mouth. He remained fixed at one place. The yoga powers or siddhis sought him, but he spurned them all. When he foresaw the end of his prarabdha karma, Rishabha went about at will and travelled in Kanka, Venkata, Kutaka, and South Karnataka. While in the forest of Kutaka, he thrust some stones into his mouth. At this time, the wind blew high, and the bamboo tops caught fire, and the body of the king was consumed. In Kali Yuga, King Arahat of Kanka, Venkata, and Kutaka will hear of the deeds of Rishabha, and in the name of religion will introduce all sorts of sacrilegious practices as sanctioned by Rishabha's example. Skanda 5, Chapter 7. King Bharata married Panchajani, the daughter of Vishwa. He had by her 5 sons, Sumati, Rashtrabhrit, Sudarshana, Abharana, and Dhumraketu. This Varsha was formerly called Ajnabha. When Bharata became king, it was named after him Bharata Varsha. King Bharata performed the Vedic yagnas and made offerings to the Devas, but he knew the Devas as manifestations only of Vasudeva. His mind became pure and filled with sattva. He lost himself in devotion to Vasudeva. At last he divided his kingdom amongst his sons and himself went for tapas to the hermitage of Pulaha in the kshetra of Hari on the sacred Gandaki. He meditated in his heart on the lotus feet of Bhagavan and became suffused with ecstasy. Bharata invoked the golden Purusha in the rising sun by a special Rik Vedic mantra and addressed him thus: Let us attain the spiritual rays of luminous Savitri that are beyond Rajas and that are the generators of karmic effects. By his mantras, he created this universe. He preserves the Jiva again by permeating this universe. Skanda 5, Chapter 8. Once upon a time, King Bharata had bathed in the Gandaka and after performing the daily practices was meditating on pranava on the riverside. A deer came to drink water at the time. While the animal was quenching her thirst, a lion roared not far off, and she in terror jumped into the river. As she happened to be big with child, she was delivered of it at the time. Exhausted, the deer got back to the riverside only to die. The newborn fawn was being washed away, having no one to take care of it. Bharata took pity on the little fawn. He took it up and brought it to his hermitage. He brought it up as his own child and became deeply attached to it. He constantly thought of the dear child, even so much so that when death approached, he could not forget it and became reborn in another birth as a deer. But though born as a deer, Bharata did not lose the memory of his former birth. He reflected that the mind that had been trained and controlled in the worship of Vasudeva went astray only for the sake of one dear child. He left the Kalanjara hills where he was born as a deer and sought for Salagram, sacred with the ashramas of Pulastya and Pulaha. He waited calmly for the exhaustion of karma that had given rise to his dear life. He then gave up his body in the sacred waters of Gandaka. A Brahmana of the line of Angiras had 9 sons by one wife. This is from Skanda 5, Chapter 9. They were all well versed in the Vedas. He had one son by another wife and one daughter. This son was said to be an incarnation of Bharata. He was afraid of Sangha or company, so much so that he would not even speak to anyone for fear of acquiring new karma. People took him for an idiot. His father strove hard to teach him the Vedas but did not succeed. His parents died and his half brothers had charge of him. Their wisdom was that of the Vedas. They had not learned Atmavidya, so they did not understand the nature of Bharata and neglected him. They gave him poor meals for the day's work in the fields. At one time, a thief wanted to propitiate the goddess Bhadrakali by human sacrifice in order that he might be blessed with a child. The victim that was procured somehow untied himself and fled. The attendants searched for him on all sides in vain. They at last fell upon Bharata, who was watching in the fields in a peculiar way. They found him most suited for sacrifice and tied him up and carried him to the altar of Kali. He was duly consecrated, and the priest took up a sharp instrument to cut off his head. Kali could no longer remain unconcerned. She rushed forth in rage from out of her image, wrested the knives from the hands of the thieves, and cut off their heads. Once upon a time, Rahugana, king of Sindhu and Saubira, was traveling in a palanquin. The chief palanquin bearer, on reaching and river Ikshumati, went in search of a bearer, and on finding Bharata deemed him to be a godsend. He found his limbs strong and well built and thought him capable of bearing the palanquin. He forced Bharata into the service. Bharata, though quite unfit for his menial work, did his utmost. But he was in the habit of looking forward for the distance of an arrow throw, and then taking steps in advance, so that he might no unwarily kill some animals under his feet. He could not therefore keep pace with the other bearers, and the palanquin lost its balance. King Rahugana became angry and reproached the bearers. They complained against the new recruit. The king taunted Bharata with these words, "O my friend, I dare say you are tired, for have you not carried me long, and for a long distance too, and you appear to be thin indeed and weak? Are you suffering from decrepitude? Are not these your fellow mates?" Bharata kept quiet, for these taunting remarks did not touch him. He was crystallized in wisdom and was no longer troubled with the false perceptions of I and mine. The palanquin again lost its balance. The king lost his temper and broke forth. Thus, "What is this? Are you alive or dead? Do you thus disregard my orders and think of living? You must be a madman, like the death god. I will punish your madness and bring you to your senses." King Rahugana was proud of his learning and his kingship. He was inflated with rajas and tamas. He had therefore no hesitation in reproaching that lord of yoga, Bharata. Bharata smiled and thus replied, "Thy taunts are true, O king. There are no doubts. I am neither tired nor did I travel long, for thy weight does not affect me, nor have I any distance to travel, nor could I be called fat, for the body is fat and not I. It is by falsely attributing the bodily attributes to self that one is said to have thickness, leanness, disease, hunger, thirst, fear, enmity, desire, sleep, attachment, anger, egoism, pride, and sorrow. But I have no such false perception. Thou sayest, I am dead even when alive. But such is the case with all beings, for they are all subject to constant transformations. Thou chargest me with disregarding the orders of my master, but only if the relationship of master and servant does really subsist. Might there be command and obedience, but where is that relationship? If thou sayest, in the ways of the world, thou art my king, momentary though these ways be, please tell me thy behests. Thou callest me a madman and dost want to punish me and bring me to my senses, but I am not mad, though I may look so, for I am fixed in the meditation of Brahma. But still, if thou thinkest me to be a madman, it will be useless to punish or to teach a senseless being. So saying, Bharata continued to carry the king. Rahugana came down from the palanquin and fell at Bharata's feet. He expressed regret for having slighted such a sage in disguise and prayed for a fuller explanation of the philosophy involved in his weighty words. This led to an explanation by Bharata of the Advaita philosophy from the standpoint of the Puranas, a denunciation of Vedic and Tantric rites, and an allegorical description of worldly life as a trading in the forest, the world being the forest and the traders being men in search of wealth. The allegory was explained by Shuka to Parikshit. The inquiring student is referred to the original for details. This is from Skanda 11 to 14 chapters. Skanda 5, chapter 15. We must hurriedly refer to the line of Bharata. Sumati was the son of Bharata. Ill-guided men in the Kali Yuga will call him coming lower down by far. Of the 100 sons of Viraja, the eldest was Satyajit, or the conqueror of the 100. Thoughts on the line of Priyavrata. Priyavrata means literally one of welcome. Priya, deeds, Vrata. Priyavrata was under the influence of Narada from the beginning, and he declined to go along the descending path or Pravriti Marga. He was wedded to the daughter of Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma is a cosmic manufacturer. The work of this Prajapati extends over the whole of Triloki, and he is the architect of all systems and chains included in the Triloki. Priyavrata, as we shall see later on, represents the earth chain only, the system known as Bhur. What we generally call the solar system stands between Bhurloka and Swar and illumines both the lokas with its rays. The solar system is therefore, properly speaking, the whole of the Triloki. In speaking of Priyavrata, therefore, the Bhagavath restricts itself to the regions illumined by the sun as well as by the moon. We shall enter into the detailed description of the whole system in the next chapter. Let us take here a passing glance of the line of Priyavrata. We take Priyavrata to be the earth chain complete in itself, or rather the progenitor of the earth chain. Meru or Sumeru is the axis of Bhurloka, its highest point being the highest point of Bhurloka. The sun god revolves round this central axis. The earth god Priyavrata also revolved around Meru, that is, the earth rotated around its own axis at a very rapid rate for some time during its infancy. The rotation of the earth was followed by the separation of layers. The part most removed from the center was first affected. In this way, 7 distinct layers were formed. The layer towards the circumference was the most spiritual, that towards the center was the most material. The reason of this is to be found in the action of the 3 gunas and tamas. Sattva is on the material plane light, transparent with upward motion. On the mental plane buoyant and cheerful with true perception, spiritual. Rajas is on the material plane constantly moving, translucent with motion on the same plane without levity or gravity. On the mental plane, constantly active, partly joyful, partly sorrowful with partially true and partially false perception, intellectual. Tamas is on the material plane heavy, opaque with downward motion. On the mental plane indolent, melancholy, non-perceptive or dull. The centripetal force is the action of tamas and is connected with materiality. The centrifugal force is the action of sattva and is connected with spirituality. Of the 7 dvipas, the central is the Jambu Dvipa, which is the most material. The one farthest from the center is the Pushkara Dvipa. The spaces intervening between the layers or dvipas are the 7 oceans. They partake of the characteristics of the dvipas which they respectively surround. Thus, the salt ocean surrounding the Jambudvipa is the most material. The materiality is indicated by the word salt, which implies gross matter. Priyavrata, it is said, went 7 times round Meru. And at the time of each rotation, one ocean and its corresponding dvipa were formed. But when the dvipas and the oceans were all formed, that particular motion of the whole system was lost. Since then, days and nights are solely caused by the motion of the sun round Meru along the Manasottara range. The 7 dvipas may be the globes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G of theosophical literature. The rulers of these 7 globes are 7 sons of Priyavrata named after Agni or fire. Agni is here the form-giving energy of each globe. Of the 10 sons of Priyavrata, 7 only became rulers of the globes, but the other 3, Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana, had nothing to do with the creative process. They are highly spiritual entities beyond the plane of the 7 globes. The daughter of Priyavrata was Urjaswati, The word means full of energy. She was wedded to Shukra, the presiding god of the planet Venus. Her daughter is renowned Devayani, who was married to King Yayati. She stands for Devayana, the radiant path of the Upanishads, which transcends the trilogy. Of the sons of Priyavrata, we of Jambudvipa or Globe D are directly concerned with Agnidhara, who presided over its earliest destinies. The Bhagavata does not relate the genealogy of the other sons, as at present we have nothing to do with the life evolution on these globes. The process of materialization is indicated by the Jada state of Agnidra on seeing their Apsaras Purvachitti. The sons of Agnidra are the 9 Varshas or continents. We shall learn the details of these Varshas subsequently. Of these Varshas again, we are directly concerned with Nabhi. The word Nabhi means navel, which as is at the center of the body. The Nabhi Varsha is the pivot on which the other Varshas hang. The Nabhi Varsha is what we know as our earth. The 9 Varshas are also placed layer over layer as the Dvipas are. When Nabhi underwent further transformation, Rishabha became his son. In Rishabha, we come to a turning point. He is said to be an incarnation of Vishnu. The word Rishabha means bull, but that meaning does not give us any help in understanding Rishabha and his work. Priyavrata moved rapidly around Meru till the globes were formed. This is in accordance with the nebulous theory of Laplace. When the globes were formed, the earth became denser. As the density increased, the movement of the earth became irregular till at last the planet became fixed. This is not the Western idea. The Puranic idea is that the sun moves around the earth and the earth remains fixed in its position. The story of Priyavrata's line is based upon this idea. Another idea of the ancients was that the planets had speech till they became solidified. Rishabha took upon himself the vow of silence. His son Bharata became speechless as a deer. It was necessary to put a limit to the materiality of the earth. The hard crust that formed the shell of the planet could not be allowed to affect its heart. The earth was not to lose all spirituality. Therefore, Vishnu incarnated in Rishabha so that spirituality might be stored in our planets for the evolution of those jivas that dwelt over it. Look at a Paramahansa, the ascetic that neither speaks nor moves. Judging from outside, he is no better than a mute animal, but he is all spirituality within. Such is the nature of our Mother Earth. The thrusting of stones into the mouth of Rishabha is suggestive. The sons of Rishabha are the countries of our earth. Of these, Bharata, which is India, was the firstborn. The spiritual character of this holy land is shown by the story of Bharata. Bharata was obeyed and imitated by 9 brothers, of whom Brahmavarta is well known as described by Manu. Malaya is Malabar. Vidarbha is Birar, and Kikata is Bihar. The sons of Rishabha very likely include all the countries of the earth. Rishabha called his sons and asked them to follow Bharata. Will other lands now follow that advice?